Oh, there it is in the air. Go
It's
ahead.
the same airplane. This is my second later Kenner. This airplane actually was manufactured in 1932.
Oh,
But the earlier Kenner that I had early in my life was a later Kenner, which was manufactured in 1935, and it was just like this, except it was the paint that was different. It was the same airplane, but it had a 125 Kenner engine, still 5-cylinder. This is a 90 horsepower here.
okay. So the last picture and this picture are different planes, huh?
No, it was the same.
Okay.
I don't do that. This is the same one.
Okay.
The other one was blue.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go to the next picture.
Okay.
Oh,
This is still the same one,
yeah.
and this is taken up in New York. This is the guy I bought it from.
Oh,
And here's one of his hangars there. He had several hangars. Here's my friend John Audrey's Apache right behind it there.
oh, okay.
It was red and white too. That pins this down to 1977, because I was at that time running the airport at Cartersville, and John kept his Apache up there. He only had it for a little while, so he kept his Apache. So I know it's right then while he owned that Apache. And that's Gene. I think that's either John or Audrey.
Yeah.
The legs on it must be John.
Okay, let's move on. Oh, there you are starting to...
Same area. This is when I first got there. And that's the hangar that I started keeping it in. Parked it out in front. The guy that took this had a photo shop in the local town there where this airport was, and he was out there and all around the airport, and he wanted a good picture of me propping it. That's a posed picture. Didn't need to start the airplane then. I'm not sure. Looks like Gene's still in the seat, but anyhow, I was just playing. Okay, now I've mentioned John Carter a couple of times. John, a friend, and he had a little grass strip of his own, and he was a good A&E. He converted this from a standard. This is a standard Luscombe, but you wouldn't recognize it at all.
No, I thought it was a monocoupe.
It is a monocoupe replica.
Is it?
It is, because Dunn Luscombe is the guy who designed the first monocoupe.
Oh, really?
There's a history between all this. So my friend John had bought this 8C Luscombe, so he had it all metal, and he cut off the firewall and found this cowling somewhere. I don't know what he got it off of, and put a radial. I've forgotten what, a little about 225 horsepower radial. He found somewhere and put all that together and made it look and be with the paint job. He got a photo of an early Luscombe, so it's all Luscombe simulated, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And he and John was just interested in duplicating the Luscombe.
You mean the monocoupe?
I'm sorry.
You mean he was simulating the monocoupe?
Say again.
You said he was simulating the Luscombe, but he was simulating the monocoupe, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got it backwards, didn't I? Yeah, that's right. And so we were both flying. This is the Cartersville Airport is right where that light spot is, right there, right behind that hill there, and the approach path right through that gap right there. And John's strip is about a couple of miles right up here, and we were both putting a slow time on this engine. And the mod, when you do a mod like that, with it's not an airworthy mod by FAA standards, you had to go through it just like building a home built. You had to go through 25 hours local flying, then 50 hours within their area before you go cross country type thing. So we just slow timing it to get some of that time on it. And I guess John was flying at this time. I can't remember who made the picture and who was flying. But it was a pretty interesting project. Just one of John's attempts at being A&E. He was good A&E. I wouldn't say attempts. He'd done a lot of things.
So this was not your airplane?
Not at that time, that's right.
Okay, but you did own it later, huh?
Yeah, later. That's right. we put a lot of time on it, and he flew it a long time, then I flew it a while.
How did it fly?
Just perfect, just like a Luscombe.
You know.
Didn't fly like a monocoop. Monocoop was always very fast and high wing loading. And Luscombe's just standard 65 horsepower.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, that's a standard Stearman, and the picture and the pose of me in it is a attempt to duplicate a pose of a Stearman picture that I had already, and I guess Johnny's got it now, of a Civil Air Patrol Stearman back in 1945, 46. But this picture was made about 1980 roughly, much later. But I was flying with a lady who owned that Stearman, and she was like, you can imagine with lady pilots, a lot of them, maybe not all of them. She wasn't very, what would I say, personality and daring pilot. She had flown before I flew with her in there. She had flown Bonanzas and Travel Air Twin even. But she just, I started flying with her in this, and flew with her for, I don't know, must have been a year. I guess I must have flown with her more than 100 hours. There's her name, right? She signed this for me. Arlene Connor. Her husband, in 1946, the CAP Stearman, which we had a CAP group there locally at the airport on a Sunday. Here, her husband, I can't remember his first name, Connor, and a buddy of his were flying our CAP Stearman and made an inverted pass, or attempted to make an inverted pass over the airport. Runway was grass field there.
Oh, that's that guy, huh?
And they didn't make it. They landed, just slid right along on the top wing, stopped.
They got the tail the tail was too close to the ground, they couldn't go up?
Yeah, when you're flying inverted, you can't dare get close to that tail. It's way down. Yeah. The slower you fly, the lower it is. And it touches, if it touches the least bit,
you're down.
Notice it just pivots right down.
Yeah.
And it landed right on that top wing, and they slid along, didn't get a scratch. And just tore that airplane to pieces, appearance-wise and everything, but the interesting to me, it didn't break anything on it. Didn't break the struts or anything. The fin was scraped off and bent over. But we were so mad, the CAP group was so mad at this guy and his buddy. But then later, as I say, this is 30 years later, I was flying with his wife, and she was very nice. I had to break off with her, though I flew with her for, what did I say, about a year, I guess, off and on, pretty regular. And I finally had to just tell her I didn't want to fly with her anymore. It just broke her heart. She was determined to fly a couple of times a week, and I was just wearing me out. I was charging $50 an hour for dual in the Stearman at that time, and she shelled it out. They had plenty of money. And it looked like to me she was intent on me subsidizing the rest of my life to fly with her on that Stearman. I had to just force her to quit. And she didn't ever fly it again after that. She just quit. I guess her husband's a good pilot, but maybe she didn't get along so good with him. She didn't want to fly with him anyhow.
Okay, let's move to the next.
This is back at Lockheed. This is, of course, C-130. This is me, and this is Lloyd Harris, who was chief pilot of Lockheed at that time. And this is Bill Kinney, who was a classmate of mine in high school and had become in later years, this year, by now he'd become editor of the local paper. So they had news making things for Lockheed. Somehow he got into all that. They let him take a ride on the airplane, and he asked for me and Lloyd. Lloyd was a year ahead of Bill, but they knew them. They were good friends. So we were three classmates, so to speak. on a C-130 flight there at Lockheed. I don't know whether there's a date on there or not.
Did you do one of your demo flights of it? Or did you just take him for a ride?
Oh, we just took him for a ride.
Yeah. You did did you do JATO tests?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody did in the flight department. It just depended on you. You got your name showed up on Tuesday morning, your name's at number 2 place, and that airplane happens to have JATO.
Okay.
You know, it's just numbers.
I see. So this is one of the planes you've got the most number of hours in.
Yes, it is. This is an old one, though. It's 3-bladed propeller. It does have the Pinocchio nose. The original didn't have an extended nose like that.
Right.
Real ugly, I think. This made it look a lot better, strangely.
Mm-hmm.
And then the later props were 4-blade. And then, I don't know how long now, it's been quite a few years back now, maybe 10 years now, there's 6-bladed props on that airplane now.
Yeah, scimitar blades.
All kind of changes. It's been a long, I don't know the number now, but let's see, it's been in production since 1955. So it may have reached the longest production run of any airplane in the world.
It may have. And it's still the world's workhorse.
Yep. Great airplane.
Yeah.
C-130, a story about it.
Yeah.
The newspaper editor, that's Bill Kinney. And then the Hercules on Water program, HOW program, was a C-130 amphibian feasibility study. Lynn Purdy at Lanier Industries got the contract with Lockheed to build a big model of it. I think the span was about 14 feet, something like that, I've forgotten.
Why don't you go to the next picture too? There's quite a whole series of pictures here. You can tell us about the project as you go through them.
Yeah, there's a better picture. So the whole project was about that right there. To see if they decided they made the hull look like a seaplane, but the purpose of the project was to develop a seaplane that would endure, you might say strength-wise, endure sea state 9. Sea state 4 is the highest sea state any seaplane is certified today or then.
Okay.
And they were trying to up that sea state roughness of the sea from being harder on the hull up to a 9. And so the designers do that, and the way to do it was to get the ski. The idea was to start rolling, sliding on the hull and get up to about 35 or 40, where the ski would be water supported enough to lift the whole airplane. It would lift up out of the water.
So that was not a hydrofoil, it was an actual, like a big water ski.
It was just a water ski, that's right, and not a hydrofoil.
Huh.
There's only a technical difference between the two, but that's the right words.
Right.
But anyhow, the Navy paid for this model and the whole engineering program to determine the feasibility of the C-130 to put this scab hull on it, put the ski on it, and learn to operate it. Martin Marietta had made a similar project back about 10 years before that. They took 2 PBMs, a pretty big twin-engine airplane, and put a ski on it and flew it a couple of times and crashed it, and put a ski on another one, flew it a couple of times and crashed it. What they called porting and unporting. When the whole airplane, the ski comes out of the water, that's unporting. When you land on the ski, you let it slow down, and that ports is just the terms they used. And what they found out was Martin quit the program after crashed 2 airplanes. That when it unported, meaning go down in the water, it started sinking, and as soon as it sunk straight down, it would whip 90 degrees to the right or left, either way. They couldn't stop it. They crashed 2 airplanes, so they quit the whole program.
So there were yaw problems as it was going in and out of the on and off the ski.
Down into the water. No problem coming out.
Well, there's no water rudder in the back, so I could see why there might be a yaw problem on that one right there.
Well, there never was a rudder on the Plan or the Martin airplane, but on this air model, let's back up a step. we ran a whole test program with the engineering department of Lockheed, doing everything they could, built a model and took it up to the lake and tested it, and it would do the same thing.
Huh.
And I had to back up a step. That part of the engineering program's plan on this model was to put a mount in the fuselage, a horizontal back and forth mount, and the ski strut was mounted on that, and it could be positioned up and down. Martin Marietta never did move it. They just decided where it ought to be, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And that was their problem, because this ski, when the Lockheed engineering put it where they thought it should be, it did the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it got so bad that at that point that Lockheed spent all the money on their program that the Navy gave them, and they washed their hands of it. And the RCers, myself, who one of the guys was actually in the engine department, and myself and one other guy said, well, we built that mount in there for it to move. Let's move that thing and see what they thought it should be way forward to keep the airplane from tipping over once it was on the ski. Mm-hmm. That's the only words I ever heard. And they had planned to move it back a piece at a time.
They probably had it around the center of gravity.
Yeah, probably so. I don't remember exactly where it was. Oh no, it was well forward the center of gravity.
Or was it?
And it was very hard to get up on the ski with power. It was very hard to get up there. Hmm. But it finally would get up there, but then when it landed, pitch off. And so when they gave up on it and washed their hands of it, we asked for and got permission to try a couple of days ourselves, and we just had already talked about it. We just unplugged that ski mount, and we were going to try it one at a time too. And we said, no, let's get this over with. So we just plugged it in the last place, which was behind the CG, and fastened it in there and put it in the water. And it jumped out of the water just like a ski boat, right, gone and off the water. We'd never been able to get it off the water before.
Why'd you hit the next button there?
And this one came off the water quick, and once off, the model flew pretty good for the model. And it wasn't very powerful, so it was just hanging in the air, but it flew okay. And so we flew it, and then went back to Lockheed and engineering, and they called the Navy, and the Navy people came down from Washington again, went back up to the lake and demonstrated for them that it worked okay. But it sounds like a success story, but I know I wasn't in on any of the talk, so I don't know. But the Navy didn't ever make a seaplane, real one.
Yeah.
So they did.
You had a movie, 16 millimeter movie of that for a while, didn't you?
Yes.
That was confiscated more or less from you?
Yes. Yeah, they gave all of us on the program this big old movie, and I carried mine around for a while. I showed it to model clubs, and went up to Greenville one time to that club up there where those club pictures were, and showed it to them. And during the process of showing that movie to that club, I was talking during the movie and telling them what it was, this and that.
Okay. Go ahead.
What I was saying to you that Lockheed didn't want to move the strut, and I was explaining that all to this model club, and this guy that was in the engineering was also a friend, I thought, but he was listening to this, and he thought I was being ugly to Lockheed, I'm sure. I don't blame him, but he was a little bit ugly about it himself. And so when I got through showing that, then I got back home to Lockheed. The next day or two, I got a call from engineering saying, send your film back. They going to take my film back because I badmouthed engineering, which is kind of ugly to him, but it's okay. We turned out to be friends okay later.
That's just some information about it.
The description of the Lockheed HAL program.
Yeah.
And that's some of the requirements. That's a review of the HAL model, proposed airplane. Another picture of it.
Now, what size, as an RC modeler, you were involved in it from two different directions, both as an RCer and as a test pilot of the 130, what size engines did it have in it? Do you remember? Like 90 size or whatever?
Yes, I remember they were 50 size engines.
Oh, 50.
And that was too much power by double. The engineering department had declared to do this test they had to be scaled, airplane scale power.
Oh.
I can't tell you how they figured that out, but they knew exactly how much power they had. So when we went up to the lake every day, we had to hook a spring scale to the back of the airplane, and do this, hold that, and we got all the engines started and run up the power and read with a scale. We had to cut the fuel down so it wasn't powerful, and then we had to keep putting bigger props on. These were just for pictures. We flew with 2-blade props.
Oh.
We put bigger props on to try to slow it down. We worked and worked till we had, and then when we got it right, we had to hook up the spring scale to the back of each engine, run one engine at a time, and measure the actual thrust.
Yeah. Static thrust is pretty much a worthless measurement anyway, though, but whatever.
Whatever. And in any case, it flew anyhow.
Yeah.
There was plenty of power once we got the ski right. So I guess that would have worked out if they wanted to make a real airplane.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the lake we went up to when we flew from, where is it? Right here. And when it flew the first time, taking off this way, went way out here, and I wasn't sure about the turn, and so I went all the way around this island and came back around here. I was out of sight for that long, but it came back out flying low, just as slow. I was worried about, not about hitting, but the pitch, and because it was just hanging on. But we made it. And when it started, we had markers. I was talking about distance markers along here. Had a camera over here, and these distance markers were scale distance for measuring footage to see how long it took to take off from that ski. These are some pictures. This is an assembly on the beach there. And that's me, I guess.
So you were the pilot?
Yes, I was one of the pilots, and the other guy, an engineer, and the other RCer that took the film away from it was the other pilot.
Oh.
And he was probably mad because he never did get the flight. I let him tax it one time during the whole program, but we had so much to do when they were making steps, so I wouldn't give up the transmitter. And he, I'm sure he didn't like that. But
how long did this project go on?
2 months during the summer. I spent the whole summer, instead of Lockheed flight operations, spent up this lake. Pretty good deal.
That's a good picture.
Shows the ski picking it up.
Yeah. There's a sequence of pictures of it taking off.
This was mainly to show what they call the rooster tail. That one of the things they were worried about was that once, as it was trying to get up, the rooster tail, the water coming up from the ski, would hit the horizontal tail.
Did they add a dorsal fin or any more rudder area or anything, or
No, that's a C-130. It's a tremendous fin and rudder, so it had plenty of fin.
Okay.
That was one reason they could choose that airplane, because it had great seaplane characteristics.
Man, that thing leaped off the water, didn't it?
Yeah, that's when it got off. It really jumped off.